afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the regular monthly board meeting of the Lake City Development Corporation. This is June 17th. Let's rise, if you would all please, and say the Pledge of Allegiance. Scott, would you lead us today? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So before we go to our first public comment, I would like to ask unanimous consent of the board to amend the agenda by removing item 7, sub A, sub 3, which is the Midtown project participation. I'm doing this at the request of Deanna Goodlander, our housing committee chair, who's learned recently that there may be a group of investors interested in approaching us about a project up there. So I think that deserves our consideration. So we're going to, if everybody consents, we'll take it off the agenda. Any objection? Hearing none, it's so amended.
I think that's great.
Yeah, well, hopefully something will develop. So approval of minutes. We need a motion to approve the May 20th, 2015 board meeting minutes.
Public comment.
Oh, excuse me. I missed public comment. Sorry. Any public comment? Seeing none, approval of the minutes for May 20th of 2015.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion, corrections? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Sorry to get ahead of myself. We have a long agenda, so I'm trying to get through it. So our next agenda item is a presentation on Coeur d'Alene's technology infrastructure, and we've had the pleasure of having Greg Green here, CEO of FatBeam, which is a fiber optics company. Come on and join us, Greg, if you would, please. Have a seat at the table and tell us what's happening.
Where do I start? First of all, I want to apologize. I was supposed to be here a couple of weeks ago, and my travel schedule got moved around, and we spoke in front of the FCC, so it was good to represent Coeur d'Alene and our company at the FCC, but I sort of dissed the council, so my apologies in that process. So FatBeam is a competitive access provider. I've been in this space for a lot of years, and dating back 20 years ago, deregulation or more of the phone companies, there was no competition. It was a monopoly in the space of telecommunications. And first you saw the makings of long distance, and then you saw the internet become prevalent, and then also cell phones. But for a period of time, 100 years, there was no competition in the area of telecommunications. So the phones companies kind of ran monopolistic, and also the cable companies did as well. In fact, in a lot of markets that FatBeam serves, we're headquartered right in Riverstone. My partner Sean Swamby and I own the company. Sean also owns Adnetics, which is a pretty prevalent company in the community. In Post Falls, he has about 100 employees that he employs here, out of his Post Falls headquarters. Ours is in Riverstone, FatBeam is. So today we employ about 10 people out of that location, so we're fairly small in terms of an organization. We build fiber optic networks, so we're in 23 markets from Butte, Montana to Bend, Oregon. We're in southern Idaho. We are in Spokane. We actually have fiber networks there. Yakima is a very large network for us, but we're in a multitude of 23 markets, and we have about 300 miles of fiber collectively in all those markets. In Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, Post Falls, and Liberty Lake, we have about between 65 and 70 miles of fiber. And to sort of give you an idea of the investment that is required, it takes between $50,000 if it's aerial. I know everyone loves to see, underground utilities. We all like that, and we really like it, especially when someone puts conduit in there. But if there's no conduit in there, it can range as high as $100,000 a mile for us to deploy. So you take 65 miles of fiber and combination of aerial and underground. That's sort of our investment in this area. So we are sort of a wholesale provider. We have long-term contracts with the school districts, Post Falls, Coeur d'Alene School District, in this area anyway, and then in other markets. And then After we deploy the fiber for the school districts and get them high-speed internet, it also helps lower their cost of internet access because we connect them to the AT&Ts, to all of the other carriers, which maybe Coeur d'Alene did not have a choice of in the past, so that can also help in a competitive environment. So our customers include education, which I just mentioned, and then after that, when we install fiber, we install a heavy count fiber. So the cost of building fiber optics isn't so much the numbers of fibers. In our case, there's 144 fibers, just like hairs, literally small fibers that connect the network in North Idaho. The school districts maybe use less than 10% of those. So the rest of those fibers we lease to the fire stations in the community here. We lease capacity there to the higher education, University of Idaho, North Idaho College. The hospitals lease a lot of our fiber capacity for imaging and things like that make it quicker and faster. And then we lease to other carriers, and I say ISPs. Like as an example, I will give you Intermax. Intermax is a local business that's owned here locally, and we lease them fibers on our network, and they in turn turn that into essentially a residential and small business product to deliver to their customers. So we're sort of a backbone provider, and maybe in the market of Coeur d'Alene we might be a household name at some point, but really our objective is really never to be a household name as much as provide the infrastructure that the cities need to create economic development and sort of continue to drive technology. Today we're busy on a number of projects. We're constantly doing laterals. So what we mean is we have a fiber backbone. The fiber backbone extends through downtowns. It extends out to Rathdrum, through Post Falls, back to a very large commerce facility called Tierpoint. It's a very big data facility. If you ever, I guess I really can't tell you who all of them are, but let's just say if you were to shop on Nordstrom's, which I could say, it's very likely that FatBeam carries the traffic from let's just say my wife shopping on Nordstrom's, to Tierpoint where their data facilities are. So it's very, the transactions that happen in a market like this, shockingly, are right across the border at Tierpoint, or they start here in Coeur d'Alene. And so while we have an extensive backbone, we're continually building what we call laterals. And those are extensions off the backbone. It would be very similar to the community building extension of the sewer network to connect another development of homes. That's what we do to continue to add more commerce or business customers to our network. So we try to be as disruptive as we can. We obviously have a city franchise with cities of Coeur d'Alene. So, and we try to be as disruptive as we can in terms of traffic control and things like that. Probably about 2 months ago, the most challenging part was wasn't because I knew that it was happening. It's because my partner told me his wife couldn't get through traffic delivering the kids to school. But that's how I knew we had a construction project going, and it was right down Northwest Boulevard. So we had to take 2 lanes down to 1 lane so that we could facilitate that and reach a number of banks. So that's what we do. You today, whether it's internet or fiber transport, it's as ubiquitous as essentially water and power for a business. I mean, you have to have communications today to deliver. And you think about schools. Coeur d'Alene School District has 1,600 cameras, and to get that amount of capacity, copper isn't necessarily an alternative anymore. It takes high-speed, fiber optics. And then also cell towers. We build fiber to cell towers. So, you look at, I always jokingly say, the glasses on the table, in this case the water bottles. If those were cell towers spread out through the city, the cell towers are great, but they get congested with copper. So you really need high-speed fiber optics to alleviate the capacity and take the traffic off the cell tower and bring it back to Frontier or bring it back to, CenturyLink, if that's the carrier, or possibly bring it back to the cell carriers, which is Verizon and AT&T. So, again, about a total of 13 employees, very small in nature in terms of, the size of our company. We came out of deregulation. This is probably my 8th company. And I love building companies, and then, and I love small towns, honestly. When I was with Craig McCaw, who bought a company from me years ago, I love building communication companies. I love investing in them, but I love it when a small community, and New York, Seattle, LA, that's what they call the NFL cities. They got all of this technology first. So now we hit the Coeur d'Alenes, which there was some technology in Coeur d'Alene and some fiber optics, probably not to the extent we have now. But then it excites me to make sure that the next step is to make sure the Hayden Lakes and the Rathdrums, which are getting that capacity, and the smaller communities are served as well. Because I think that and the value of education remotely from your house is very important. So, what can I do to help answer questions about what we do? Or
Okay. Well, I think the interest was to figure out if we have sufficient capacity in terms of fiber optics and data backbone,
Okay.
particularly in our districts, which is sort of Coeur d'Alene proper and out Celtice Way.
Celtice, okay, yeah.
Are we covered out there?
Celtice has always been a challenge for us. I know that the cable company has some facilities out there. There has not been, everything out in Celtice Way has been underground. It's very expensive. We have some needs to get to the call centers out there. They only have a couple of choices today. So I would say that's an excellent point that we are probably missing. Our infrastructure does not go down Celtice, at least let's say between the Post Falls exit. Was the exit just before Green? What's the new overpass? What is?
Green Ferry?
Yeah, we go across Greens Ferry, and we just moved our fiber from aerial across the new overpass, but that's about as far down Celtice as we go until you get to the Riverstone Commerce Park. So that is a challenge, that particular area. If there's ever a public-private opportunity to install conduit or something, we would be interested in doing that. We built the first diverse path back to Spokane out of Coeur d'Alene. For a lot of years, there was one carrier, and when someone hit a pole, typically it was in the Spokane Valley, it took down a lot of network in Coeur d'Alene over the years. So when we built Coeur d'Alene, we purposely built a different route into Spokane. U.S. Bank Building is a large carrier hotel, and that's where all of the carriers congregate. Every city has one. But unfortunately, as you got farther and farther outside of Spokane, you just did not have the diverse connectivity. And so there was a lot of exposure there. So we spent about $1.8 million to build back to Tier Point. So Coeur d'Alene now has diverse capacity in and out of the market. And I think there's a fair amount of excess capacity. I wouldn't even say we're using 30% of the capacity today on the Fat Beam network. So we've got a lot of room for growth.
So in Celtice, I know the city, and they've approached us, it has some future plans of redoing Celtice Way from, let's say, Riverstone to the western boundary of Coeur d'Alene, which would be Hutter.
Okay.
That might present an opportunity for
that would be great. We would love to be, if there's any way we could get served notice, not that kind of notice, a good kind of notice. If we could get served some sort of notice so we can participate. To lay conduit in there while construction's going on or existing makes so much economic sense for everyone. Because I really do think that you brought up an excellent void in the market today, and that's Celtice. There's a lot of development, big business, call centers, yet it's very difficult to get capacity, to those locations. The other ones that we look at are trying to get across the lake too. We've actually looked at laying fiber under the lake in certain places so that those on the other side of Lake Coeur d'Alene can get the type of connectivity which they can't get today. So we'll continue.
They're getting connectivity through phone lines?
Through phone lines. There actually is a copper. If you were to walk out at the end of Tubbs Hill, you'd see a pedestal. I know that's not exciting to you, but to me, that's my business. There's a pedestal there, and there's copper that goes from the end of Tubbs Hill and comes out over across where the old Arrow Point is. I don't even know what you call it today. I'm sorry. It's been a while.
Still Arrow Point, yeah.
Yeah. I'm old school, so I know it's Arrow Point, but it's Gosser now. So there's copper that runs across there, but as you know, copper's constrained. And then there's wireless, and sometimes wireless has its limitations. Can only do so much with that. But those are two areas I think that are interesting to us. The other is we're looking, I should say that we're looking at a grant with the Federal Communications Commission to build fiber to Sandpoint so that we can get connectivity back and forth to the hospitals, education space, and things like that. So I think there are grants that we're looking at that may help us have it make economic sense. Obviously, we're a for-profit company, so met with the bankers today, and they always like to see a return on investment, or I guess they won't be our bankers very long if we don't. So, but we, on a national level, we do explore those sort of grants that will help us get places that maybe collectively we couldn't get because it just doesn't work out financially. So we're keeping an eye on that for the community.
Other questions of Greg?
Yeah.
In cities, Greg, I assume you pay some sort of fee to the city for easements?
Correct.
Is that correct?
Franchise, yeah, typically a franchise.
Does that show up then in your customers' bills?
It does, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
it does.
Do you know how much the city of Coeur d'Alene generates off?
I believe
fiber
it's
easements?
6%. I want to say it's 6%. And it would be common across all the carriers to rebuild that. Otherwise, they're at a 6%. It's costing them 6%. I believe whether it's cable television or competitive companies like ours, I believe it's 6%, right around there, typically in Coeur d'Alene.
Is that negotiable, or is that an FCC, state of Idaho?
I guess I'd have to defer if there's any attorneys in the room, but usually it's not very negotiable. If you are a competitive status or you're a cable company and you're looking for right-of-way, you're required to pay and enter into a franchise agreement. What I think is unfair, and I might suggest that it change, is that the phone companies don't have to pay a 6% fee. So, because they're a monopoly from years past. So if you look at it, I think, one, the city's probably missing some revenue opportunities.
Hear that, Troy?
Two, which I think is, and the other part, so one, you're missing revenue opportunities. Two, you have situations where you have a company like ours that spent $5.5 million in Coeur d'Alene, and out of the gate, we have a 6% disadvantage. I mean, if you're comparing apples to apples on a product, we're already upside down 6%. So we either bill that to the customer, but at the end of the day, it's still 6% because someone's paying it. So I think that's something I think cities should probably evaluate is, since they are the incumbent, they have most of the business. And all we're saying is let's just make sure that it's on even ground.
Yeah, ground.
Yeah, even ground.
Okay.
I didn't do that purposely, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for the correction.
Any other questions? Brad?
I just got a quick question. So is development in the Southeast Way corridor being hindered at all by lack of fiber out there?
I would say definitely. I would say that because there's a lack of infrastructure, that certainly it slows growth. There's no question. And not only slowing growth, but for the people that are out there, they really have few choices out there. So without question.
So somehow we got the U.S. Bank call center in spite of that.
Yeah, I really don't know whose fiber they're operating.
Yeah.
Most of the competitive carriers lease our network. They lease it and they turn that into an internet product or phone service. So I could make a couple of guesses at who has that as a customer in terms of telecom. I'm guessing the incumbent phone company or cable company, but I don't know 100%. But example, Yakima, Washington. There was two carriers there that had fiber. There was the incumbent phone company, the incumbent cable company. The cable company at the time was charging. They had 24 schools. They were charging $37,000 a month to connect the 24 schools, and they were getting a 1 gigabit of capacity. When Fat Beam comes to town, we sort of change. It sort of I don't want to use the word intimidates, but it does change the playing field. So when we come to town and we charge $24,000 for 20 times that speed to the same locations, suddenly you have a little competition and things get viewed differently. And so all of a sudden there's more competition, prices come down, products get better, I think, but then, that's very one-sided on my part. So I think it's good. I think it's good for economic development. And I think the other thing that would be helpful to us, though, is just continuing to get qualified technical people so that we don't ever have to move our headquarters. I mean, we really love being here. I live down the street. Danny and I are both on Lake Shore, but on opposite ends. And we love to live here, but it's difficult to continually to hire really, really good people. So that's the only challenge that I see, because I think the Riverstones and the developments that you have going There's no reason not to keep headquarters here. Other than the property tax, we're charged a property tax. In 23 markets, it's the only market that we are charged a property tax on our fiber. So again, we pass that along to the customer, but it's the only market we have property tax on fiber optics.
You said you're in Boise. Did you say that?
Outside Pocatello, southern Idaho.
Okay.
Southern Idaho, yeah.
So that's the same state. They're not charging you tax
It's a
down
county
there?
tax, yeah.
What's a county tax?
County, yeah. So we find that, we find that sort of interesting. When you think about that, it really makes a guy like me go, well, should I continue to invest another $1 million in a place that will charge us property tax on fiber optics, or should I take that $1 million and move it to a market that doesn't and creates the same return? So that's one. That just is an eye opener. We just found that. You know what? We didn't even find out till the end of 2014. We got hit with I believe the bill was $30,000 or $60,000. I can't remember if it's for a year or half a year. So that was sort of a surprise. Those little things kind of add up, just sharing openly.
That's interesting.
Yeah, we found it interesting. Yeah.
I think the utilities as a whole in the state pay some
Property.
property tax for their facilities, but
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, and again, I'd have to look into the laws,
But you're not taxed in southern Idaho.
We're not. No.
Interesting.
No Butte, Montana.
maybe they just haven't found you yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know about other states, but I just find it interesting in the same state, though, that you're taxed here and not taxed there. Yeah.
I'll check into that, and I'll actually report back to Denny. I should probably disclose it once in a while. Denny and I have some work on legal side of things, but I'll check into that a little bit, Denny, and maybe I can report that back to you, and you can share with the group, just because I think it's important to be accurate.
Interesting question.
Yeah, we should be accurate.
Yeah. Any other questions of Greg?
Just one quick follow-up.
I have a comment, though. Speaking of that, we want to be factual. Does Frontier put a fiber in the lake? It goes in at right here at 3rd Street. In fact, the guy that built it is sitting in the audience here.
Okay.
Goes in at 3rd Street dock and comes out at Arrow Point. There's a fiber there. Frontier, or Verizon at that time, also built a fiber completely through to U.S. West on Celtice and has fiber running all the way down Celtice, as does Sprint Communications.
So they've got
two
Sprint.
fibers, two separate company fibers
In
running.
Celtice.
Okay. That's it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Appreciate your sharing some
Very
time
welcome.
with us and
Very
good information, Greg.
Very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
You bet. Come back anytime. Next on our agenda, we have John Barlow from Hagedorn Hospitality. Welcome, John.
Well, thank you. As busy as you are, I'll try to be brief. I'm officially here as the manager of a company called JRB Properties, and I'm consulting now for Hagedorn Hospitality. So as I say I'm speaking on behalf of the company that I worked for 35 years. We are in the process of planning a project for a new tower of hotel rooms downtown, adjacent and attached to the resort. And we started this project in early planning in 2007, and I think most all of you know what's happened in the interim. And the good news is things are recovering, and our business requires that we look hard at this, because one of the major portions of the hospitality business is group business. And many of our groups who come through meeting planners love Coeur d'Alene. Most everybody, as you know, knows Coeur d'Alene, but they find that the hotel is not big enough. Many groups have a benchmark of 500 room minimum before they won't come, because they can't accommodate all their core group. And at 340 plus or minus rooms, we've planned that a 200 room tower would get us to that new threshold and really help with additional guests at the hotel. The property that we're looking at is the west end of the shopping plaza, which was the old Western Frontiers building, and connecting to the hotel where the Sky Bridge is today. So the building would go from Sherman Avenue to the north face of the parking structure Here's a little picture I'll hand around so you can look at while I'm talking. To accommodate this, the downtown zoning that exists has setbacks and heights and bulk and mass, which is a different issue, but within that we can accommodate through the FAR zoning this 200-room tower. Early on we talked to the city about how to accommodate this, and there was some discussion of an easement, and now at the city's request the most expedient way to accommodate it is to vacate a portion or vacate Front Street and then grant easements back to the city for all the existing uses they have, the sewer and water and utilities and Centennial Trail, public access and so on, so that everything that's there today would remain by easement rather than ownership. And so under that direction that we received from the city, we are proceeding to a July 7th public meeting with the City Council to request the vacation. Upon approval of that, if we were granted that, then we will move forward with design, which goes through the city's Design Review Commission for design, and also under the zoning ordinance of downtown for height and bulk and so on. So the question comes to us of before we can plan, proceed with any design, financing and so on, is to get this approval through the city council. Part of our due diligence involved the engagement of a company called Economic Modeling Specialists, Inc., EMSI, out of Moscow. And I don't know if you're familiar with them, but we were blown away with their capabilities and size. They're now an international company of over 90 different people, and they travel and work throughout the world. EMSI did a study for us, and it's in a preliminary fashion at this point, and the numbers are accurate, but the final report will be presented to the City Council meeting under these same economic numbers that I want to report to you. Their study shows that this tower will provide in construction $70.1 million of economic contribution to the local economy and 633 jobs. In the early years of operation of the tower, as we get started, they're estimating 67,000 guest nights or new visitors per year to this new tower. And during the first year of operation, those guests will contribute $30.2 million of economic contribution to the local economy and 470 permanent jobs. In what they call the stabilized years, which is after 4 to 5 years of establishing and our booking of solid new groups, we're talking about 94,000 new visitors to downtown per year, and an annual contribution of $42.2 million and 635 new jobs. Added to this are the tax impacts of this facility. To the state of Idaho, they estimate income tax to be $3.1 million per year, sales tax to be $2.5 million per year, travel and convention of $0.23 million, and a franchise fee similar to what was just discussed of $0.02 million per year. And the local property tax, it's estimated to be about $700,000 per year new. We find that as you probably know or do know, the entire project is within the Lcdc boundary, and that when the Urban Renewal District was established, the resort was kept out of it, as I was part of that at the time. It had to do with fluctuations that could go up or down and might quite negatively impact what you do. But with this new facility, all of the property tax money is in your district. We are here today to request your endorsement officially in front of the City Council for our July 7 meeting, as it certainly fits the definition of a resultant economic development through the growth and prosperity of the community. Talking with Tony in years past, that's been a model of what you sell, of how this works. And the investment that we make will be 100% of our own money. We will not be requesting any Lcdc funding. It has to do a lot with personal pride with our chairman and owner, and it's the way we like to do business. Yet all of the tax money will be available for your district for the time that you continue to exist. We are not sure of the exact starting date. It could be the exact opening date. It could be as early as May of 2017. We're very time sensitive in the sense of when we open a hotel must be in the spring. Particularly, usually around May. We opened the resort in May of '86. Doesn't make sense to open it in the fall and have all that investment go through a winter. So to make all that work and working backwards with design and construction and approval, we're not sure if that date is going to be certain or not, but that's the earliest we could be open. First thing is to get approval to build it, and to build it as part of the existing hotel. The planning groups that we talked about are very particular, as they represent up to 50 or 70 different companies, of how rooms are a part of the same resort facility. There are horror stories, as you can imagine, and maybe some of you have experienced, where you think you're going to the beach of Hawaii and you're 3 blocks up in the Annex Tower. And that they don't allow that to happen. And so this facility must be connected physically. We have a plan. Our plan includes a bridge on the second level at the north face of the parking garage that will come around over the driveway entry and then escalate. We'll take an escalator down right into the lobby, so it will be part of the hotel. We are planning no additional food and beverage, no additional spa or golf. We will have additional meeting facilities, but with 70 to 90,000 new visitors, the impact to downtown is obvious with retail and restaurant and so on, which is part of their economic study of how do you get $42.2 million of economic contribution. So that's my quick dissertation on understanding your time constraints. We feel it would be appropriate for your endorsement. Since the money does go to you, it's exactly what you're here for, is to help stimulate this type of project. And it also provides you with the ability to carry that forward to other worthy projects within your district. And I'm ready for any questions that you might have.
Questions
I
of
did
John?
it pretty fast, so maybe I...
Hi, John.
Hi.
I remember talking about this project some years back.
Yes.
I've got just a couple questions for you. We developed a view corridor regulation some years ago in the city in order to make sure we didn't have a wall around our public facilities such as Tubbs Hill. Do you not see this as kind of taking that view corridor away from that area?
No.
You know, you're talking about a monolithic building now.
I'm not talking about a monolithic building, Deanna, because the building hasn't been designed. I'm talking about a vacation of street so that we can design this building.
I understand that.
The city has a design review commission that deals with the look, and it also has a downtown zoning code that deals with the core height, the setbacks, to protect exactly what you're talking about.
So you're, and forgive me because I'm not familiar with obviously this particular plan.
Right.
But you feel that within the city guidelines that this building would be acceptable.
Yes.
And you've checked the design review and all the processes, and they feel the same way.
Well, the building hasn't been designed yet, so we will need to address the actual final design with the Design Review Commission.
But
what we have checked
the appearance
is the zoning that deals with bulk and mass and height and setback, because as you get higher up, you have to set back further from certain streets in downtown Coeur d'Alene. And we can build this tower with 200 rooms. Actually, we can get to 216, but we're not sure we'd build that many, and still fit within the legal envelope.
That was one of my questions, and I know the reason behind the extra 200 rooms. It means you have the ability to attract the better, larger conventions, and I certainly can see the economic value to that. I have one other question. Will you be increasing the size of the parking garage?
Yes, we'll be adding one more floor of parking. One other question that, as to the design of this building, it's the first thing our guests will see when they arrive in our driveway and come in. So we're not going to design a prison. It would not do us any good at all. And I think our reputation's pretty good in that regard.
I have one more question.
You bet.
Basically, the city has told you that it would be better to vacate the property to you. That's come from the city planning department, or
From the legal department.
From the legal department,
Right.
Actually vacating, and just a vacation. There's no monetary value to the city for the vacation. There's no, if we were to lease it instead of giving it to you and get a long-term benefit in terms of maybe lease money going to Park and Rec or something like that. That's never been a discussion.
That's never been a discussion. What we originally asked the city to do is to grant us an easement. And it turns out that there are some legal precedents that create problems with that in the state of Idaho. So the city legal department said the right way to do this is a vacation. And so that's what we are pursuing.
That's what you're pursuing. Thank you, John.
You bet.
Kind of as a fault.
Mick had his hand up first, Dave. Sorry.
From looking at the drawings, I can't quite understand this. Are you looking at building the building over the top of Front Street and
Yes.
connecting it to, so you're looking at vacating the space above Front Street to build over and connect to the parking garage?
Yes, I know you're on air, so it's difficult, but this is the existing sky bridge.
Right.
So it goes over the same space a little bit higher than the bottom of the existing sky bridge, so that the opening remains upon completion of the project.
And what's the depth of the building along Front Street there?
It's approximately 42 feet, because this is a single loaded corridor building, which means there's a corridor and rooms on one side facing west. And there's really no view to the east that's worthy of trying to sell.
So you're just going to face west. You still get 200 rooms in there.
We can.
Dave.
John, your original request of us was, as you said, kind of in lockstep with what we do, creating new jobs in the community. How many new permanent jobs? You had a number, I think, there once, but I didn't know if those would actually be checks you guys would be writing, or if your economic study was talking about the additional employees that neighboring restaurants would.
It's total economic impact.
Yeah. How many new jobs would the resort create with this investment,
I don't have that number handy, but the impact that
I
they
know
calculate,
They've got a formula for economic people come in and
it's
spend
more
money.
than a
and
formula,
create.
it's a science.
Okay.
But they have, upon completion and full operation, 635 new jobs, total economic impact to our geographic area. Excuse me.
Cost of the project?
The original construction impact is $70.1 million.
Now you're saying impact.
I'm not able to say what the exact cost is.
Okay. In your business, both in the real estate, there's value to air rights, correct? If I buy a building on Sherman that somebody else owns the air rights, somebody paid something, or there was some kind of compensation exchanged for the vacation of that building or of those rights over that property to be developed, correct?
When you buy a building, part of what you buy is what does the zoning allow, would be the way I would analyze it. I think that's the same thing.
Yeah. Also, whatever kind of covenants or restrictions are on that property that allow you to develop that under the current code. Correct?
Right.
And I would look at it as an air right or a height limitation or restriction as being something that somebody has value exchanged for. And this is kind of a follow-up to what Deanna is talking about. I don't know if the city, and again, that's a little bit outside the purview of us. You know, I started down and talking about permanent jobs, the economic engine that it's going to help to increase in the downtown, stimulus of business. Talked about the investment of the construction dollars that your corporation is going to invest to stimulate the economy and the turnover that those dollars create. And also, like you talked about, the sales tax and the employment taxes, the bump to the property taxes are all very positive things, are all about what we do.
Right.
Okay. I think the only thing me personally I've got a little bit of uncomfortableness with is the vacation of the air rights over Front Street is what you folks are basically asking for. Your study says that your tower has to be probably within a certain distance of the core of the hotel, or it becomes an annex, like you were referring to?
Attached.
Attached, okay. And I don't know how far the breezeway falls in that definition of attached, but you would still then, at that point, if this happened, you'd at some point still be able to build a tower over the remainder of the plaza shops, correct? As long as it met the criteria of planning and zoning setback, shoreline ordinances, and that sort of thing.
No.
You wouldn't be able to build. So
No, you're familiar with FAR?
No.
Well, that's the new zoning. It's floor area ratio.
Okay.
So most of the FAR that we own from the plaza
Is being put into
this facility.
Said most of it. So
So
there wouldn't be enough
that's
left.
exactly the air right trade-off that the zoning provides.
Okay.
And the benefit to the city is you can't buy a city block and build a building as high as you want on all four. You have to limit it to what is your ratio, and then B, setbacks after 45 feet and additional setbacks after 75 feet. And that's the whole idea of the zoning that was adopted in 2006 or thereabouts.
So 500 and some odd rooms is about build out for the FAR ratios for your property that currently exists down there.
There would be very little FAR left to build
expand.
another tower.
So
That's exactly the premise that the resort got built with in 1984 and 5 and 6, was in lieu of a China wall along Lake Coeur d'Alene that met the code, isn't it better to put all the bulk into one spot and leave the rest of it open? And under that premise is how the new zoning was written in 2005 and 6. I was part of that committee along, I don't know, Deanna, you might have been there too.
I don't think I was on the committee, but
Brad
Brad
probably
was.
was involved with it, sure.
And so the question really comes, is it worth that to get 635 new jobs in our community, 94,000 new visitors, and $42 million of economic impact year after year? That's the question. Is it worth what you're concerned about?
Okay. I'll agree that's the question. In that location.
Brad.
I just have a quick question, John. And I think you can tell the street vacation and air rights is on a lot of our minds, but that's really a city council function, I guess, at least from my perspective, so we can't really address that here. But I'm just curious. I'm trying to tell from your plan there. Does that tower, is there any airspace between that tower and the hotel, or does it physically connect to it, or is there kind of a part of a skywalker breezeway and there's some airspace between the buildings? Or
Well, what I said, this is the parking garage.
right.
So it's the north face of the parking garage all the way to Sherman Avenue.
Okay, so it touches the parking garage and then goes back.
And then this is a new walkway elevated above that takes you to the lobby.
Okay.
That's what I was trying to see too.
Then on the east side of the building, and obviously we're not the design review committee, but on the east side of the building, are you planning some design other than a blank wall? You know what I'm getting at?
we're aware that we have to meet the Design Review Commission
Yeah.
criteria. A couple of things that we did is we added stair towers to create shadow, because shadow is a great assistance in design.
Right.
So we're not there yet. We have to know first, can we build the building, and then we move to design. The city's assurance is, A, we have to comply with their zoning ordinance, and B, we have to comply with their Design Review Commission. And that's step 2 and 3 after, if we receive approval.
Okay, thanks.
Other questions of John? So what's the pleasure of the board?
I definitely think it fits into part of our mission as far as, creating economic development, creating jobs, creating vital activity in our core. It's definitely the Lake District. I think it's a great project. I hope it goes forward. I think, Hagedorn Corporation's got a reputation of building buildings that do add to the value of the downtown core, and I think it's a great project.
So what we're doing, Mr. Chairman, is this an emotion that we endorse the concept of the project?
Yeah, it's a request that we, I guess, endorse the project in concept. I think some of the comments that have been made earlier on about staying away from particular design issues or the legalities of the vacation, all that's got to be decided by the city.
That's not our purview. I mean, I think the way I look at this from Lake City Development Corporation is that our mission is to strengthen the downtown core, the Lake District, and I think that fits into our purview, only in that way.
Yeah, I think whether we have some personal concerns about this, and we've talked about it, there's different committees and boards and organizations down the road that deal with that. So, like you said, it's really not our purview here.
Is there a way to craft a motion or a response to Hagedorn Hospitality's request that conceptually we agree with the premises that have been provided, not being provided, I'd say, anything as far as how it's going to look design-wise, or being able to weigh in on the legality or the vacation, the air rights, or or I shouldn't say air rights, but vacation of the street.
Right.
That really is outside our purview. I don't think we can make an endorsement to that. I think we can make an endorsement to the concepts that John's brought forward as far as what Brad and what Nick have talked about. But as far as whether that's the appropriate place that the public needs to, I say, give up that public access or public ownership of that street, even though there's, I think, easements perpetually being offered in return. That's really outside our purview. But
Yeah, that's a city council.
I could certainly endorse everything but those items. I'm not saying, I guess what I'm trying to say is I don't want to be quoted in the paper tomorrow or the next day saying that we endorse building the tower over Front Street. Okay? We endorse, at least I endorse the concept of the economic investment down there. Over Front Street is yet to be determined.
So you endorse the addition of hotel rooms in downtown,
Oh, yeah,
downtown
rooms, the
core
jobs.
and the economic development.
Yeah, I
job
think he
creation that-
used John's notes as what he quoted as far as the EMSI impact on the core.
How about
Yeah.
this? Just listening to you, a motion made to support the premise of the proposed project's economic impact to the community, but the board cannot endorse the specifics of the project since it's outside the LCDC's purview and has not been endorsed or. by
What
city
I'd say is,
council.
what I'd say is subject to the appropriate review by the city for compliance with all of its zoning ordinances, including the all of its applicable ordinances.
Yeah, subject to review of the various city agencies.
And
Yeah.
review by the Design Review Commission, compliance with that. I do think it would, I'd be comfortable just adding some language about, ensuring that there's no loss of public access here, that it's also subject to appropriate perpetual easements for the trail that now exists on Front Avenue. So we'd have approval of the project in concept because of the addition of jobs and economic impact long term, including the tax increment, which fits within our mission, subject to appropriate review by the city of the issue of the vacation, compliance with all of its zoning and design review requirements, and maintenance of perpetual easement protecting public access on Front Avenue as it now exists.
I can live with that.
Yeah, it's subject to approval of city council.
It's the ultimate review.
Without their approval, it won't happen. So.
Yeah, they're meaningless.
Right.
I think everything you said is good. I think it's subject to approval of city council and the other appropriate city agencies.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Get that all, Tony?
I've got the
I think
gist of it.
I think we shouldn't get it too complicated.
It's pretty complicated.
Yeah.
So, but I've got the gist of it, and I'll fine tune it and run it by you.
So I make the motion that we make that endorsement.
I'll second his motion.
Discussion.
What does Danielle say about it on the legal side? Do we make endorsements like that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any just support. It's just like any other support for a project. You don't have any. I mean, you don't have any
tax increment and economic development, and why wouldn't we?
There's no financial stake for us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think we're trying to say we endorse it, but the building's still got to be designed. It has to have approval of the city council and all the various agencies, but we endorse the concept of it and the tax increment and long-term tax base and the jobs it'll create. You can fit that in.
Can we put on there that we want a board member on there on the design committee so we can get what we want on there?
As long as I'm on it also. That's fine.
Do you want to be on the design?
Submit your application to the city, Scott. Deanna, do you have a question?
No, I just have a statement. I am going to oppose this motion. While I endorse the concept and I endorse totally the jobs, and I have the greatest respect for Hagedorn Corporation, I believe they've done great and wonderful things in this community, and I have to say I love the resort and use it frequently. And I just have to say I have a discomfort in the giving up of public space for no return to the taxpayer. And so for that reason, even though it's not in my purview as a LCDC commissioner it is the city council that makes that decision, I still don't feel comfortable endorsing the concept without a stronger look at a return to the taxpayer, even though the taxes will be huge in the future, and they will, and it will return to the taxpayer in that respect, and very likely could reduce property taxes. I still am just not comfortable with the process, so I'm going to have to say I will vote no.
Motion that you are working on, Tony, that we have made, does it say that we have agreed to the concept of locating this over the existing public right-of-way and the vacation of that right-of-way? It doesn't say that, does
No,
it?
it doesn't.
Okay.
It says support the premise of the proposed project's economic impact to the community, subject to meeting all the city's ordinances and design review standards, subject to retaining all the existing public access on Front Avenue, and subject to city council's approval.
Maybe it would clarify it. At least I'd like to see something that, and this is going to be a 5-page motion, that talked about the site or the location of the tower to be determined. Because I don't think our motion should be construed at least from my perspective, that we're endorsing the location of it over Front Avenue. I mean, I'm not in favor of stepping in and saying that's what we're endorsing, or at least having it be perceived that way.
I guess I don't want to get too complicated, but I guess and I share Deanna's concerns. I share your concerns about the air rights and the possibly long-term income and so forth. I guess I'm just trying to separate myself from that and say that's a city council function, but I'm endorsing the concept of this tower and everything it will bring to the community and the jobs and the tax base. But I'm trying to separate my personal feelings and about various parts of it. I think we've all got different feelings about it, but overall I support the concept and I think it'll be good for the community, but it's really a lot of these details are a city council function. It probably could be an interesting meeting at the city council.
Well, it looks to me like the nuts and bolts of it are the mass of the tower that comes close to, use John's words, maxes out the FAR, can be moved around that property's footprint down there. I realize there's design things that affect where it moves and what it ultimately looks like, but that the mass can be moved. It doesn't have to be over the street.
And it won't be unless the city.
Yeah, marketing has told them that it needs to be attached to the main mass of the building. And I understand. I've been to conventions with annexes, as John referred to, and it's not cool to walk 2 blocks to your meetings. There's a significant downgrade to the value of that. So I understand that, but the negotiation is going to be as this mass can be moved more towards the plaza building over the top of that, or maybe it goes up over the garage more, something that equates to them being able to market it. And I'm certainly not a design expert or a functional expert to tell you what it needs to be, but that isn't in our purview anyhow. But I wouldn't like to be, I guess, going on record that this entity is in fact endorsing building it over the street.
Mr. Chairman?
That yet's to be determined.
Yes, John.
Can I make comment?
Briefly.
The comment is that the project is the project that builds over the street. That's the project that we want you to endorse or not endorse.
Okay.
To endorse a project that is something that you're imagining that's different, you may as well not endorse it, because we won't build it.
It's that way or the highway.
Well, that's the project that we have that works.
Okay.
And I apologize, but otherwise the endorsement means nothing.
You're not happy with our support for your economic development downtown? It needs to be. You're looking for a specific location?
I was happy with your endorsement that Tony read until you start saying where it has to be. And then it doesn't work, because we're contributing this kind of money into this community and these kind of jobs, and I can't understand your analysis that it doesn't give anything back to the community. So to make it very simple, this is our project. We understand, and I agree, it's appropriate for you to say that it's subject to the City Council approval, subject to the City Council zoning ordinance, subject to the City Council's Design and Review Commission. All of that's fine with me. Subject to all the accesses that they have today. All of that's just fine. But if you start talking about where we have to build it, it doesn't work. I just thought I would throw that out.
Thanks for clarifying that.
And I guess, John, I'm trying to make this general. I think, and I don't know that when you go to the city council, you might be against the parking garage. You might be 20 or 30 feet from the parking garage. I'm just, like I said, I'm trying to take myself back from it and say that's a city council decision, but I'm not.
He said, Brad, it's
attached.
It's going to be over the corner of the parking garage.
This is part of the application.
Just
I've already told you where it's going to be.
Denny.
I guess I was trying to say you may negotiate something to the council, you may not. The council may take that as it is, but that's really a city council issue. It's not a LCDC issue.
John, I need to make myself clear. I am not saying that this shouldn't be built over the street. I understand the reasoning behind it, makes sense. I just feel that there needs to be further discussion on the part of the City Council and your group as to exactly what that process is and what the return to the taxpayers will be, aside from property taxes and jobs, and I know that the 600 and some jobs are short-term jobs. They're a couple years out. Then we're going to have some more maids. We're going to have some more folks. The jobs the resort provides to this community are outstanding in my respect, in my thoughts. Like I say, I'm at the resort. I see kids going to work there. I see them either making a career out of it or I see them growing in the job. So I would never say that the jobs are not good jobs, because I think they are, and for what they are. My objection is that piece of property has value, and I'm not comfortable endorsing just giving the property to the corporation. So that's where I'm at. Nothing against the location, nothing against the process. I get it. But I'm just not.
I don't think we ever said that, though, Deanna. I mean,
and I realize
I
we didn't say that in the motion,
Right. The
and I
motion
think
I
the
made-
motion is fine the way it is.
I
But I'm
agree.
just saying my
That's
personal
understandable.
reasons for voting no are that. And so I want to make it very clear that I'm not opposing the project. I'm not opposing the jobs it'll provide. I'm not opposing the tax increment. I'm not even opposing building over the street. I'm concerned about the compensation.
And I believe that's going to be handled by other committees other than this one.
And I agree. It's just I have an opinion that I have to vote.
Hey, Mr. Chairman,
Brad.
could Tony read his motion again that he made, and John said he could concur with Tony's motion, and we've talked so
Repeat the
much, I'm
motion one
trying to
more time.
remember what
I
Tony's
will
motion
repeat the
was
motion.
that he,
Motion
or
by,
our motion was that Tony typed into his computer.
motion by Armin, seconded by Jordan, supporting the premise of the proposed project's economic impact to the community, subject to meeting all the city ordinances and design review constraints, subject to retaining all the existing public access on Front Avenue, and subject to the city council's approval. I'll reword that to make it sound better, but those are the components. Did I miss anything?
Is that how you remember it?
Generally.
Question. Off the question.
Any other discussion? Hearing none. You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Nay.
See 3-2. 4-2 if I join the motion. Motion carries.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you, John.
Appreciate your time.
You're welcome. Okay. Committee reports. Finance. Yeah, are you going to handle the finance,
I will
Tony?
handle.
Rod's absence.
I will handle finance and Rod's absence. Anybody need a copy of this?
Oh, yeah, please.
I do too.
One more, please.
I got it.
Danielle,
I'll take one if you have one.
Oops.
You need it? You can have that.
No, I don't need it. I got it.
I'll start with the Lake District. On the balance sheet, the Lake District experienced a $649,766 decrease in cash assets from April month end, primarily due to our acquisition of the Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railroad right-of-way that the board approved. You'll see a new fixed asset on the balance sheet designated as Burlington Northern Santa Fe. On the other assets on the balance sheet, the Washington Trust Bank bond, we have an interest earnings of $111. Going down to the liabilities and fund balances, a pretty mellow month this month, only $8,738 change on the mortgages and notes payable line item. Everything else is pretty standard. If you turn the page to the Lake District's P&L, we've received $37,161 in tax increment revenue from the county in May. Our professional fees line item is a bit higher than normal due to payment of a $13,653 Welchcomer invoice for the Four Corner master planning process. The office supplies line item is a little higher than normal since Lcdc chipped in 50% for a new computer for Tree Taylor, our online communications coordinator. The Chamber of Commerce picked up the other 50%. So that's it for the Lake District. Turning to the River District, the balance sheet. The River District experienced a $667,478 decrease in cash assets from April month end, once again due to the acquisition of the Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railroad right-of-way property in that district. And as with the Lake District, there is a new asset line item on the balance sheet with Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railroad, fixed asset. And the liabilities and fund balance, pretty much no changes except for the 2% credit to the ARCH line item. And then on the P&L, we received $22,017 in tax increment revenue from the county in May. And all the other line items on the P&L reflect a 50% contribution to the general G&A of the organization. So pretty quiet month other than the two railroad right-of-way acquisition impacts. If there's no questions, I'll pass around the payables for review. Welcome, Jesse.
Thank you. Sorry I'm late.
I presume the new technical facility got broken ground.
The groundbreaking was broke was at a good attendance out there, and then lo and behold, there was an accident on Highway 41 on my way back, so I took the long way.
Not surprising.
Well, for the payables for the May and June, we have a Elam and Burke legal counsel general services, or general counsel charge of $316.15. Under Holly Troxel, we have a legal general counsel charge of $39,969.50. And of that, about $1,684 was towards the closing of the Burlington Northern Santa Fe acquisition. Molitor and Associates Consulting, Government Relations, $2,497.41. And then finally, Range Northwest Incorporated. This is the LCDC Re-Awareness Communication Strategy Phase 1, $10,912.50. So total payables, I'm looking for approval for $17,695.56.
Move to approve.
Move to approve the payables and the financials. Any questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, Housing Committee, Deanna.
I don't have a report.
Okay, Parking Committee, Brad?
Let's see, Mr. Chairman. Just go over a
Maybe I
couple
should,
things.
Denny, just make a comment that there are some beginning discussions of some potential in Midtown, but nothing has firmed or just anything more than just very, very preliminary discussions.
Are those some new investors?
We'll see.
Okay.
Are they looking at a partnership? Or are they looking at buying us out? Do you have any interest in idea?
The discussion hasn't gone that far. It's just merely been, do you think this is a direction we could go? Well, yeah, see what you can come up with. Come back to us with an idea. So that's pretty much where it's at. So there's no firm, as far as I know, there's been no, it may have been a meeting in the last few days, but not to my knowledge. I've not been privy to anything other than a cup of coffee, and do you think something could work? And, my recommendation was, if you find something that'll work, why, come talk to us.
That's great. Maybe something will happen.
Okay, back to Brad, Parking.
They're looking at possibly doing some, this is the Parking Commission, but the city doing some reconfiguration on 4th Street to put some parking back on 4th in that block just north of the McEwen Garage. I think that's partly being driven by the potential hotel that could be built there, that they need some valet parking. And then they're also potentially looking at putting some short-term parking back on the other side of the street, too, and then you'd have a one-way, one-lane street that would come north from the garage. So that's under study right now, and some of the area businesses right around there, as well as the recommendation of the Downtown Association, was to do that because it's kind of dampened the business around there a little bit, not having the parking in that block. And they did a little bit of amending to the parking ordinance to streamline it, and the holidays that were defined by the old city ordinance didn't actually always coincide exactly with federal holidays. So now the ordinance is going to say that there's that there's, free parking on Sundays and holidays, or on street parking. You don't have the 2-hour limit on Sundays. I don't mean to say free parking, but you don't have the 2-hour limit on the Sundays and federal holidays. I want to clarify that. Not free parking. And also, this has been an ongoing thing since way before I was appointed to the Parking Commission. They've been trying to come up with some way to have some enforcement of habitual parking ticket violators. I guess some people have dozens of tickets, and they just go on getting tickets. So the legal department's been looking at what some other cities have done, such as Boise and Portland and so forth, and they're going to go to look at doing a booting program. And so a couple of things. If you have 4 or more unpaid tickets, you'd be considered a scofflaw or habitual parking violator. And I think there'll be potentially something on the city website that has a list of people that don't pay their tickets. And then they'd go to booting, too. You'd be subject, after a warning, you'd be subject to having your car booted. Then you'd have to pay all your tickets and get them caught up. So they're working on that right now. And I guess we've had 7 no oversized parking signs destroyed in the garage because there's trailer parking for boats and trailers in the garage, but some people go ahead and pull the big boats in there too, that are really tall, like cruisers and some of those, and then they take out the sign that says no oversized parking. So they're going to try and come up with some better signage and direct people to the other lot over here that doesn't have an overhang you have to drive under, where there's some overheight parking available. I think that's it for now. That's the latest update.
Amount of information, Brad. Questions of Brad? Okay. Communications Committee, Dave.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A little over a year ago, we hired Range Northwest to give us some input on how we could better communicate, educate who we are and what we do. As the first part of that process, we entered into we commissioned with Robinson Research and identified a significant shortfall in awareness of our agency's role in the projects we have helped our community achieve. The survey conducted in and around Coeur d'Alene concluded that fully 2/3 of the survey participants had no awareness of the Lake City Development Corporation, or our shorthanded moniker LCDC. Yet we learned that there was a great familiarity and a strong public support for projects we had helped develop in the community, such as the Kroc Center, the library, Riverstone, and the higher education campus. With its new trade name and a more robust communications with the community, we intend to garner the community's attention and build understanding of what we do and how we accomplish that work on behalf of the public. The name the Communications Committee is proposing for approval tonight is Ignite CDA. Ignite CDA is proposed as our new name. It's symbolic of the energy. You might ask to put the slide up for the viewing public and also folks here in the audience. It's symbolic of the energy the agency has helped create through our projects. The purpose of Ignite CDA is to bring together resources to develop a diverse, sustainable community with healthy neighborhoods, a vibrant central city, a strong regional economy, sustainable public open space, quality jobs, and housing for all. So what Communications Committee is bringing forward tonight is the moniker, the name Ignite CDA, as what we will be marketing and educating ourselves from this point on. Open for discussion. And we do have Eden here available to answer questions if you guys so need.
Tony?
Just a point of clarification, the agency's legal name would not change. It'd still be the Coeur d'Alene Urban Renewal Agency, doing business as Ignite Coeur d'Alene versus doing business as Lake City Development Corporation.
A little background, and correct me if I'm wrong, because some of this happened before I got on the board, but back when the agency was formed in the late 90s, 97, At some point, the Lake City Development Corporation moniker was established as basically a trade name for what we do to kind of publicize what the agency does and how it does its business and what its purpose is. And I think, frankly, it was kind of taken by copying Boise's Capital City Development Corporation name. It's a fine name as far as it goes, but it's funny because if you think about it, we're really neither a development company in the classic sense of the word, nor are we a corporation. We spent a lot of time talking about this, looking at the study, and as Dave indicated, 2/3 of the people didn't know what Lake City Development Corporation did. And even worse, I think, we've kind of migrated to the Lcdc acronym, and it really says nothing about what we're all about, what we do. So the concept was presented to us that we're not the first urban renewal agency around the country to adopt a little more contemporary trade name. One of the ones we liked, I think, was Light Up Littleton, I think. Lift Littleton in Colorado. There's one in Philadelphia, I forget the name of it. I mean, this is not a brand new concept for us. But I will admit that it took some time for me personally to get comfortable with it. But the more I see it, the more I use it. Ignite CDA is what we do. That conveys to people, and more importantly to the community that we serve, what we're all about. So it's not just to look better, it's not just to be prettier, not just to be more exciting, it's to connect better with the community. And LCDC, based upon our survey results, is just not doing that. So that's kind of I think the reasoning as I see it for the change. Discussion. It's important, you guys. Come on.
Yeah, I think you brought up most of the points and things that we've shared as a board, Denny and Dave. I think this is not a quick decision. It's not something that we took lightly, I think, at all. But I think the key here is seeing that there was definitely a disconnect from the community on who we are and what we are as an acronym. And I think this might give us a little more identifiability out in the community on who we are and what we are. And I think we've all had cross conversations as a board. I've certainly had conversations with Tony, who's probably my biggest concern on how this connects, and I believe he believes in it, and if he believes in it, I back it and support it. So those are my 2 cents.
I've already done all my discussing about it, so it's probably not any point doing any more discussing.
I think it's a great concept in the fact that it does give some direction to what we do. I think, Lake City Development Corporation is pretty bland. It sounds like something that is institutional. And this is a little bit more functional, where you feel like urban renewal is there to try to ignite a community. You look around Coeur d'Alene, and particularly when the economy was bad in 2007, 2008, and we were the envy of a lot of other communities because we were moving forward. We weren't going backwards like a lot of communities were back in the time when the economy was bad. And that was because urban renewal continued to ignite development, continued to ignite ideas in this area. So I think it's appropriate that we start to define ourselves in a way that is different than just an institutional name like Lake City Development Corp. And I think this is the way to go.
I just also want to agree with all that, and we've studied the research and we've been working on it for over a year and stuff, so it is not something that just popped into our head one day, hey, this is a good idea. So we put a lot of thought and effort into this, lots of time.
I kind of see it as similar a little bit to what the hospital did. The hospital's official name was the Kootenai Hospital District. They operated for years as Kootenai Hospital, and then they went to Kootenai Medical Center. They're now Kootenai Health. And I think they're using that to great advantage to communicate to the public the services that that they have and that they offer, the broad range of things that they do for healthcare in the community. I see us doing a similar thing.
Denny, I'd make a motion that we approve the Communication Committee's recommendation to take on the new identity and logo recommendation.
Moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion. Deanna.
This is my day to be contrary, I guess. I really like the term Ignite CDA, and I love the logo with the heart, with the ember, the spark. I like everything about the project, but I am not completely comfortable with disposing of the Lcdc name. I think that we've finally garnered quite a little bit of recognition for the value Lcdc provides with McEwen Field and some of the other projects that we've done. More and more people are becoming aware of them. We really haven't done, I don't think, a particularly good job of making the Lcdc name what it potentially could be. My concern about Ignite is that it just doesn't seem very business-like to me, and I feel like we're, in many ways, a business in what we do. We're dealing with business in every direction. So sorry guys, I told you this going in, that I would be more than happy to vote for, LCDC, DBA, Ignite, CDA, and see how it works for a while before we just completely dispose of the name. So that's where I'm at.
I will add, Deanna, I sincerely appreciate your energies and your struggle with this, because you have been part of the Communication Committee from day one. I want to thank you and Scott and Denny for all the hours you put in the last year and 2 months on this process. So it's I certainly appreciate where you're coming from and value your opinion and respect your input on this. So thank you.
I would join in that. There's room for disagreement. A name change for a business is always uncomfortable, so it's going to be a little bit maybe painful for some to start. But I think long term, we're going to be very happy we did this in a few years, and people, that name's going to roll off people's tongues way faster than our current name. And plus, we're told by our professionals that if you're going to make this change, you should make it. I think we'll make an effort to make sure people connect with what we used to be. I think the Lake City Development, formerly Lake City Development Corporation, is going to show up for a while, so people make that connection. But I think from this day forward, we ought to be Ignite CDA, Coeur d'Alene's Urban Renewal Agency. Other discussion? Hearing none. Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
One opposed.
No,
2 opposed.
I don't want Deanna to be alone.
Okay.
I can't speak for you because you didn't sit on our committee meeting.
Motion carries.
I appreciate that. Okay, thank you. The next part of this, and Eden, I will ask you to join us up here, is implementation of this. We have talked about a strategy, a plan to target the population that showed up as being unaware of who we are, what we do. And correct me if I'm wrong, Eden, but it was somewhere in the 20 to 50-year-old demographic we were looking at. The survey indicated there's an unawareness of what we're doing. So we have formulated a proposed marketing strategy to get the word out there, to get the icon out there, to start the process of utilizing the new name and the energy behind it. So I'd like to turn it over to you, Eden, to kind of go over these points that have been passed out here about print, search engine, TV, events, and billboard.
Okay. So print would be things that we're doing. I say print. It is the Coeur d'Alene Press and Huckleberry's Online. We're not necessarily going to be in print in the spokesman. We are targeting Coeur d'Alene because that is your area. So in the Coeur d'Alene Press, we'll be doing a Thursday strip ad on the sports page each week. Now I put the campaign in from a timeline of July 4th. through September 30th, so really capturing summer. Again, we're targeting families, people that are really using the amenities that you guys have created, the library, the parks, the trail, the Croc Center, those people that we want their appreciation for those projects to transcend to your organization. Okay, so Coeur d'Alene Press, I just told you about the Thursday strip ad on the sports page. Coeur d'Alene Press Online, you'll have an ad that are in story, so it will rest. There'll be a story that you'll be reading online, and the ad will rest in the story. So 8 in-story ads per month for 3 months. It's 24 ads. Then Huckleberries Online and Eye on Boise, both of those blogs having an ad on the left side of the blog feed. Those would run every day during the campaign. Then moving into search engines, so these would be targeted display, Facebook ads, and retargeted display. So with retargeted, for those of you that aren't aware of what that is, people who visit your site, when we do the retarget campaign, they will get a cookie put on their computer so that when they go online to Google and they're searching for whatever, your ad will pop up because it will have that cookie on their computer. Does that make sense? Okay, so targeted show ads to users in 83814 and 15 zip codes when they're searching. Facebook, Facebook, you can really target users by demographics. They know, because I don't know of all of you if you have Facebook pages, but I do, and I have all my kids' information, and they know my age, and they know what I'm looking at and what my interests are by pages that I like and what I post. And their targeting is amazing. So we'll be targeting related to family activities, parenting, youth camps. We'll be running ads in the news feed and on the right column. So the news feed is where everybody posts their posts. That's called the news feed. And then the right column is the traditional advertising column. And then I already went over the retargeting. So also doing cable ads, targeting families with kids ages 2 to 11, the adults age range 21 to 49. We'll be reaching almost 7,400 households 10 or more times with the ad during this campaign. We have a billboard available for a short-term usage. It's on Northwest Boulevard, facing north, on the west side of the street. So if you're coming down from the highway, like you're coming downtown, it's right before the liquor store on the right-hand side. Does that make sense? So it's not available till August 10th. So that will go up then. And then we're talking about launching this during the 4th of July parade, actually having it float in the parade with your identity, the actual heart flame, in a 3D replication on a float. And then there are costs for producing all of this for you, and those are highlighted down here in the corner, broken out of how those dollars are.
Deanna has a question.
Aidan, I see in most of these you're targeting families with children. Can you tell me why?
We feel that demographic is using your projects in a great extent, and because there's such low...
Can you speak up a little?
Okay. We feel that those demographics are the people that are using the projects that you've helped create a lot. The people are taking their kids to the Croc Center, they're taking them to the park, they're taking them to the library, they're using the trails. It's not excluding necessarily anyone. We're just looking for families who are most likely to be excited about the projects that you've helped create and connecting them to what you do and bringing that awareness demographic. We don't have for sure numbers on it, but we feel like there's an older segment of the population that has more awareness of you than the younger segment who's busy raising their kids and getting them to daycare or school, and they're just not connecting, like they didn't sign up for your newsletter and then they don't watch these meetings, types of things.
I'd put a little different spin on that, Deanna, because I see these as young working families that need to understand urban renewal and what it can do for a community long term, because these are people that will be here for a while, that are trying to raise their kids to stay here for a while, that are wanted to make sure that there are jobs to allow their kids to stay here. So I think our focus is, not really so much to put attention to what we want people to like. It's to get people to pay attention to us so they understand what we do and how we do it, so they can make their own educated opinion about the value of what we do and whether it's something that we should be doing as a community. That's the way I look at it. I understand Eden comes from a private enterprise marketing kind of background, and that's how they'd look at it for a different kind of a private company. But I still think it has value for us as a public entity to educate
our.
our.
On to that is how we spend their tax money.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I think it has a broader reach than just what we do. I'd like to see the ultimate goal be that this demographic is engaged in what's going on in the city and become active in voicing what they'd like to see and not see by voting and by getting involved with various committees and participating. Because I think it's important that these folks invest in that process so that we do have that sustainable long-term. You might say that you can't put your hands on the capital, but they're invested in our community and they have that tie and create value. I mean, these people create a lot of value to what we do. So that's what I'd like to see. The ultimate educational part of this be an engagement of the people in the community. So, any other questions of Eden, this proposal? One of the arm wrestles you've got, and from my business perspective, is how much do you spend? What's too much? What's not enough to start out in a educational campaign? You've got to put it out there. You've got to seek pathways, vehicles in which to put it out to be varied, to hit the spectrum. You can't put it out in print media. That's not the biggest bang for your bucks anymore, even though it's a significant part of the older population reads print media. And so we have to go out and take this to the various entities, various mediums that are going to be broad-based and target that demographic we discovered that's not engaged in city or what we do. So that's kind of why this broad range. That's why we had billboards to the print to electronic TV. So it's a broad-based spectrum, kind of a POW for 3 to 4 months, and then we'll probably end up having to do something to keep our name visible out there over a long period of time on a lesser scale.
Tony, I just have
Make
one
that
question.
brand value.
Going back, looking at the payables here, did we use up 100% of the budget for the phase one, or is there some funds still left in phase one?
Not yet, but they have targeted, they probably will hit all of phase one because they're still designing the website.
Okay, so some of the design or creative production costs will not come out of phase one?
No, this is a separate proposal.
totally separate,
This is
okay.
distinct. Am I correct, Eden?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we've got this, and then we'll probably have some more after that for maintenance.
Probably. Mm-hmm. Part of your marketing and long-term communication strategy. I hate to use the word marketing, but education and long-term strategy.
What do you think the long-term budget would be for education? Monthly or?
I don't know. I mean, we'd
think
have
it
to
would
work
take
on
in a
that
campaign
together,
like
what you
that?
guys are comfortable spending, and, it's really hard to say. It wouldn't be,
Just wondered if you had any ideas.
I mean, this is, you're going to hit a lot of people with this. You're going to get a lot of views with this. This is a blast campaign that we're trying to really launch you out there during a happy season when everybody's outside and enjoying what you've created. So we would definitely spread it out more for an ongoing awareness, if that's what you want to call it, campaign.
Okay.
Any other questions, discussions?
I'd just say that this kind of activity, because of the study results, needs to be done whether or not we have a new name, really. I mean, it's really a separate effort. It's just going to be more effective, I think, with a new name.
So we need a motion to,
We would need a motion to approve this proposal.
I'll make the motion to approve this.
Motion's made.
Second.
Made and seconded to approve the range public education initiative proposal budget. Total budget $54,269.
I think there's an additional 15,000.
Oh, that's just detail.
Hmm?
That's the detail for the top.
Is that
That's the
deal
total.
at the top?
So the 54 is the total?
Oh, okay,
Correct.
I like that better.
I will say that we pushed that budget down significantly at the committee level, and you could keep whittling away at it if you want to. At some point, you sort of neuter its effectiveness. Any other discussion? Okay, hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
And that is what we have for tonight. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dave. Thank you for all your work on this. It's a major project. Jobs Committee, Mick.
Just one thing to report. We had a nice meeting, Finance Committee meeting a week ago with people from Gizmo and also from the Tech Initiative, just kind of talking about where they're at and what some of their plans may be going forward, and we'll give you more information as we get it. Be informed as time goes on.
Okay. Questions of Mick? All right. Takes us to Executive Director's report. Tony.
This, the topic I have to share is the appointment to fill a vacant LCDC Board Commissioner position, and I think Commissioner Patzer will lead this conversation.
Yeah, before we start, I'll recuse myself. It involves the potential appointment of a person for whom I'm currently doing some legal work, so I'm going to stand aside.
I think Danny works for everybody. Anyhow,
Sounds like it. Busy attorney.
yeah. As you all know, recently Al stepped down from being on the board, which created an opening. And I think Al's remaining unexpired term is around 3 years.
Correct.
Okay. So we've always had good council liaison representation on our board from day one. We've had various council members and representation from the council. I think Al, even when he was mayor, served briefly in that capacity with us until the election results or the implementation in 1998. So we went to the council and said, we'd like to see if you'd be interested in having some sort of representation, because communication is extremely important between the two organizations. And so the mayor took that under advisement and ran his traps, as I call it, and came back with a recommendation of himself. He'd like to be considered for filling Al's unexpired term. So that is who has emerged as the person, the mayor, that would serve in that capacity of filling Al's remaining 3 years and act as that liaison. So I'd like to open that up for discussion and at some point come to a recommendation and a vote on whether we appoint him to Al's term. So I'll open that up for comments, questions.
I think from a business experience and background, Steve could bring a lot to the board. So I think the mayor could be a good person as far as that's concerned. So that'd be be my 2 cents into the discussion.
So, what kind of motion do you need? Is it a motion or?
Just a motion to
Appoint.
appoint Steve Whitmire to fill Al's unexpired term.
I'll make a motion to appoint Steve Widmeyer to fill Al Hassel's unexpired term.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
Just, is there any conflict with somebody from, I mean, obviously we've had Al and Deanna both from City Council on here before. There's no conflict with that, is there?
It's pretty typical to have representation from the council.
I'm looking at more from the mayor's.
It's a little different with the mayor because the mayor appoints
Right.
your seats. So, I mean, you can view that. I don't think there's a technical conflict, but you can take that into consideration. The fact that, you know, he has the approval of council, or has to seek the approval of council for an appointment. But
Does he have to be approved by the council or just by himself?
not for this, not for filling a vacancy. Just
This is your call.
It's our call. And I visited with the mayor about that and talked to him about potential conflicts of interest via real estate holdings in the districts and discussions about housing projects, because he's involved pretty extensively with housing in his background, and he assured me if there was any conflict of interest, he'd recuse himself from those studies and those discussions. So.
And just for the board's knowledge, there are other mayors that serve on agency boards across the state.
I think in some of the small communities, I think the city council makes up the urban renewal board.
Correct.
I had the same concern, so Max.
Scott?
You'll have to fill out the same conflict of interest form that we fill out annually.
Yeah, right. Disclosure forms.
So that'll help
You'll probably need an addendum.
outline that and stuff.
Yeah. I'm sure Tony will convey that to him as part of the official paperwork process.
After we vote
The job description. After we vote in, yeah. So,
Yeah.
any further discussion? Okay, we'll go ahead and vote on the motion. All those in favor of Steve Whitmire joining us on the board signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Back
Dave.
at you, Denny. Yep.
Board commissioner comments. Any board commissioner comments at this point? Seeing none of those, public comment. Greg, join us. Welcome.
Greg Johnson from Midtown Group. Some interesting developments, sounds like, from Mrs. Goodlander on maybe someone else interested in working with you guys and us on Midtown project. I guess I can't stress enough that you were just mentioning that you want input and striving for the community to come together and be aware of what's going on in the city and their neighborhoods and all that. So I can't stress enough that we have to be a part of these new talks. I went to the rollout of the East Sherman presentation. Fantastic. The enthusiasm, the layout, the whole thing. And what struck me was that there was a section of they had little sections that you could go to and vote on and give your comments and input on. And one was on what the makeup of what you would like to see in East Sherman. And one presentation was almost some of the identical photos that we showed of the Perry District of Spokane, of what we thought Midtown could be about. So I found that interesting that wound up on their recommendation of what East Sherman could look like. So I think we're all on the same page of what we want East Sherman and Midtown to look like. So again, the proposed project has not been taken off the table yet. So we are still very organized. We have put out 500 of these door hangers to, again, educate our neighbors and our city of what's going on, what's being proposed. And again, on the bottom, we are inviting members to be at our meetings at Kelly's Pub. looking for the right fit. So I hope the new people or the new investors are interested in the same thing. And again, I think the mayor being part of the committee here is probably an interesting and healthy change. Even with the letter he wrote to the board of not feeling that the proposed project for Midtown was the proper fit. So I don't know what influence he can have on that, on the sitting on the board, but let's hope it's a positive one. And again, we are still, you have all our emails. There's quite a few of us that you have our emails to keep us in the loop of these new talks, and would prefer to have a week to 10 days notice on proposed meetings or discussions that we can be a part of. That's all I have tonight.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for that, Greg.
Did you want your stuff
I
here,
would point out, I think it's incumbent on me to point out that the first little bullet on your door hanger
Yes.
is actually, in my view, not correct. That project is at a standstill. It's still on the table, but we're doing nothing to move it forward.
Okay. Well,
So
again,
I would ask you to go out of your way to be accurate as well, too.
that's what we're here for, and we have had no other word of it being stalled or on hold.
Well, you've assumed that you've seen no action. You went to the city council, complained because we weren't doing anything, and that's exactly right. We were not doing anything.
Listen, all I'm saying is that it has been 90 days since the mayor's letter to your board. And in that time, there's been no public comment from Mrs. Goodlander on the housing committee.
That's because, Greg, it's at a standstill.
There's
There's
nothing to report.
They're not saying there's no report.
What you're looking for is us to say it's off the table. We're not there, but we're also not moving it forward, just to clarify.
I didn't hear that part either. I didn't hear it was moving forward, and I didn't hear that it was stalled. I got no comment, no report. So again, you have a very organized, very, very determined Midtown group that wants the right fit for that neighborhood. That's all I'm stressing here.
Thank you. Mrs. Lyons.
Okay, first of all, just a housekeeping matter. I guess I don't know who the right person is to come to with this. How does the board accept exhibits? I'd like to offer one. As Greg said, the mayor wrote to the board on March 18th. That is exactly 3 months to the day. I have the letter here, and it's pretty amazing that there's been absolutely no public acknowledgement by the board that this letter exists. So what I'd like to do, and if you could just help me on the proper procedure, is to offer Mayor Widmeyer's letter of March 18th, 2015, and have it made a part of the record. I think the average person, when they hear the words no report, would probably take that to mean that absolutely nothing happened. For those of us who live and work and have businesses in Midtown, this is a really big development. So perhaps your council can help me out here. How do we offer
We have
this?
the letter in the record already, but you're welcome to leave that copy.
I would like it.
This is not a legal proceeding, so we don't mark exhibits.
I am well aware of that, and I'm just using that as an analogy.
So I think I think your husband actually requested that information was probably provided a copy of that letter. So it is in the record.
Well, let me just state then, the only reason that I do have a copy of the letter is because we made a public record request and it was provided to us. Otherwise, nobody would know about it. So that was just a happenstance. So I really am asking that it be made officially a part of everybody's record, because I really do think it's to the public's benefit to know what the mayor is saying here. And The mayor has concluded the project does not fit the long-term interests of Midtown. I think that is significant. I think that goes beyond a statement, nothing to report. And then there is a really significant, I think, the fact that the mayor has offered to give financial assistance to buying out the housing company. I think everybody here would agree that when people are willing, when government is willing to put city money with what it's requesting, I think that's significant. I think that's worthy of reporting. Sometimes the better part of valor is just to admit that this proposal will not work and move on. I think that's significant. I think that is significant for the public to know. Now I'd like to turn to another issue, a brand new issue that came up tonight. Commissioner Goodlander. The agenda item was pulled because I'm not sure why. Ms. Goodlander is very soft-spoken, but apparently there is a group of investors, we don't know who they are or what they're proposing, and they might be interested in doing something, and then again they might not. And my response to that has to be based on my own research into the long and tortured history of Midtown. So what? That's happened before. It's happened again and again. At one time, Ms. Goodlander's brother, Terry Lee, was interested in doing something with Midtown, and it fell apart. At another time, there was an interest, another project, and that one fell apart. And the problem, as we've all discussed before, is that there's a lot of limitations on what any investors can do with that. And why is that? Because of the historical overlay, because of the need to make the project pencil. I do not honestly know what is meant by that term. I have heard it again and again. But it does appear that there are a lot of limitations on what that property could be used for. And it is not helpful to the people who live and work in Midtown to hear again that there might be some wonderful project and some terrific investors out in the ether, and everything is going to be excellent. What we haven't heard is this whole troublesome issue about what becomes of the housing company in all of this. We have studied very carefully the acquisition of property to what makes up this project, every single parcel. And I can assure you all that we have confidence in the figures that are on our door hanger. And I can assure you all that it is our understanding, which only comes from Lcdc, that we are talking about, pursuant to the Internal Revenue Code and the way LIHTC programs work, we are talking about an outright gift, because that's the way the program works, of an enormous amount of money to the housing company. And in meetings, it's come up again and again that the housing company is not going to wake up one day and say, gosh, this isn't working for us. We're going to leave. Have a nice day. So, it's really extremely complicated. And here's another troublesome fact. This is what, June 17th? Well, that September application isn't even due, for a long time. So it's possible that once again, some wonderful fantasy project with heroic investors falls apart, and there's still plenty of time for THC to walk across the hall to Idaho Housing, submit that application, and basically work its will on my neighborhood. And frankly, I think it is not at all in accord with the organic documents, the amended and restated, the second amended and restated, the whole notion of public benefit. It's not in accord with any of those wonderful concepts that the people who are sitting here after, 2 hours, have to be kept in suspense and fear and tension over these very amorphous things that might or might not happen, because at the end of the day, you haven't told us anything. I apologize. I'm not saying you, but I don't think it's appropriate to expect us to rely on these very, very vague representations that there might be something. We understand that the way in which this project may have been proceeding is in a direct response to the Idaho legislature's response in turn to the Kelo decision. There's a lot of restrictions in Idaho on what can be done with eminent domain after Kelo. That public purpose is very important. I can certainly understand why Commissioner Jordan is nostalgic for eminent domain. I have heard him say this in public meetings. And I will say this about eminent domain. It forces those who would use it to pay a fair market price for things that the entity wants to acquire. However, under the current construct and Idaho, and using the URD, it does appear that Lcdc and THC, not being able to use that eminent domain, have had to approach property owners who hadn't considered selling the land. So what do we have? We have eager buyers and reluctant sellers, but I will not bore you with the details.
As long as you've had 10 minutes, if you
Mr.
could
Chairman,
try to
I've got
wrap
another
it up.
appointment I might have to leave for.
Excuse me, I understand that, but all of these people, their time has value.
We understand.
And I do realize,
You could just keep to your point.
I do realize that you are volunteers, but I would just like to remind you, well, it's in the words of Mr. Jordan, I sit on this to serve the community, and I care about Midtown. I care about the neighbors. I've got an open mind on this. And yes, it's true that there's not compensation for serving on this board. But I've got to imagine there must be, psychic compensation? Otherwise, the commission would not be so intent on marketing itself as if it were a commodity. You produce no product, and yet you want to have a billboard. This isn't a good, it isn't a service, but there's going to be an ad campaign. I'm bewildered, but I do thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mrs. Lyons. Any other public comment? Thank you, Susie. Seeing no other comment, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
David?
Motion carries.
Wanted a pen, sir?
You're welcome.